Once upon a time, in a small village, there was a young woman named Lila. She had long, thick, shiny hair that everyone admired. It was so beautiful that when the sun shone, it looked like gold. People in the village would often stop and stare in awe when Lila walked by. One day, a rich noodle maker named Mr. Kong came to the village. He had heard stories of Lila's amazing hair and was eager to see it for himself. When he saw her, his eyes widened with excitement. He quickly decided he wanted her hair. He sent a messenger to Lila with a strange offer. "Lila," the messenger said, "Mr. Kong wants you to marry him. In return, he will give you a lot of money and food for your family. All he wants is your beautiful hair." Lila was shocked. She had never heard of something like this before. How could someone want to take her hair just for noodles? Lila didn't know what to say. She had heard that rich people could be very strange, but this was the strangest thing she had ever heard. She thought about her family's poor situation. They had no money, and her parents worked very hard every day. Could this offer be the answer to their problems? Lila had a difficult choice to make, and her heart was filled with confusion. She was scared but also curious. What should I do, she wondered. Lila sat down and tried to think carefully. Her heart was torn between two feelings. One part of her wanted to refuse because her hair was something she had always cherished. It was a part of her, something that made her feel special. The other part of her knew how hard life was for her family. They worked from sunrise to sunset and still barely had enough to eat. Maybe this could change everything for them. After thinking for a while, Lila decided to talk to her parents. She needed their advice. That evening, she sat down with her mother and father and explained the offer. "Mother, father," she said, "I've been asked to marry Mr. Kong, the noodle maker. He will give us a lot of money if I agree to give him my hair." Her parents were silent for a long time. They didn't know what to say. Finally, her mother spoke gently. "Lila, we love you very much. You are a strong and wise girl. You must decide what feels right for you. But always remember, true beauty comes from within. It is not just in your hair." Her father nodded. "You are our daughter, and we want you to be happy. Whatever you decide, we will support you." Lila was grateful for their love and support, but now she felt even more confused. Could her hair really be worth so much? She had to think about it more. The day of the wedding came quickly. Lila stood in front of a large mirror, staring at her reflection. She was wearing a beautiful gown, and her long hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. It was shining like silver in the sunlight. She felt strange. Part of her was excited to be marrying Mr. Kong because it meant she could help her family. But another part of her was sad because she was about to give away something that had always made her feel special. Her hair was so much more than just a beautiful feature. It had always been part of her identity. It was a gift from her family and from the earth. Lila walked to the wedding hall with a heavy heart, her steps slow and unsure. The hall was filled with people who stared at her in amazement. Everyone admired her long hair, and they all whispered about how beautiful she was. Lila felt their eyes on her, but she didn't feel beautiful. She felt like she was losing a part of herself. When she reached the altar, Mr. Kong smiled at her, his eyes sparkling. He looked happy, but Lila couldn't help but wonder if he loved her for who she was or just for her hair. She took a deep breath and tried to stay calm, knowing that this was the moment she had to make her choice. Mr. Kong took her hand, smiling widely. "You are as beautiful as I heard," he said. "I am very pleased to have you as my bride." Lila smiled weakly, but inside, she felt nervous. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew what Mr. Kong had wanted from the beginning. "Now," Mr. Kong said eagerly, "it's time for you to give me what I came for." He gently touched her long hair, his fingers brushing against it as though he were about to take something precious. Lila felt a pound in her chest. It was like he was taking a piece of her heart. "You are so lucky, Mr. Kong," she whispered. "But I feel like I'm losing something very important." Mr. Kong laughed. "Don't worry. Your hair will be put to good use. It will make my noodles special, unlike any others in the village." Lila tried to smile, but her heart wasn't in it. She had made the decision to help her family, but now that she was standing here, about to give away her hair, she wasn't sure it was the right choice. The ceremony was taking place, but Lila felt like she was not truly part of it. She had agreed to this, but now she had doubts. Was it worth it? As Mr. Kong reached for her hair, something surprising happened. Lila's hair began to glow softly. At first, it was a faint light, but soon it grew brighter, like the light of 1,000 stars. Lila gasped. This was no ordinary hair. This was magic. She felt something powerful rise inside her, something she had never felt before. The hair seemed to move on its own, wrapping around Mr. Kang's hands. He pulled back in shock, his eyes wide with fear. What is happening?" he cried. Lila didn't understand, but she could feel the magic inside her growing stronger. Without meaning to, her hair lifted off her shoulders, swirling in the air around her. She felt like she was controlling it. It wasn't just hair anymore, it was a part of her power. "What is this?" Mr. Kong asked, his voice trembling. "Why is this happening?" Lila took a deep breath, realizing that she had a secret inside her, a secret that no one knew about, not even her. "This is my hair, but it's also my strength," she said, her voice steady. "It's not just for beauty. It's much more than that." With a flick of her wrist, her hair untangled from Mr. Kang's grip and floated away from him. The room was silent, and everyone stared in wonder. Lila realized that she wasn't just a bride anymore. She was something much greater, and she wasn't going to give her magic away so easily. Lila stood there, staring at her glowing hair, still hovering in the air around her. She felt a new power she had never experienced before. The people in the room gasped in awe, their eyes wide with shock and curiosity. Mr. Kong took a step back, his face pale. He had never seen anything like this before. What kind of magic is this?" he asked, his voice trembling. Lila didn't know how to answer him. She had no idea that her hair had any magical power, but now she could feel its strength inside her. It was as though her hair had a mind of its own, and it was protecting her. Slowly, Lila reached up and gently touched her hair. The glow faded, and her hair fell back to its usual soft waves. The room was still silent, except for the sound of her heart racing. Lila's mind was racing too. What did all of this mean? Why was her hair so special? And why had it reacted the way it did when Mr. Kong tried to take it? "I didn't know," she whispered, "but now I do. My hair is not just for beauty. It's a part of me, something magical." Mr. Kong seemed confused, but also scared. "I wanted your hair to make my noodles special," he said, his voice shaky. "But now, I see that your hair is much more than I imagined. You have powers." Lila nodded slowly, realizing that she had something very rare, something that could change her life and her family's future. "This is my gift, and I won't let it be taken away so easily," she said firmly. After the strange incident with her hair, Lila couldn't stop thinking. That night, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her mind was filled with questions. How could her hair be magical? Why had it only revealed its powers now? And why had Mr. Kong tried to take it away in the first place? She knew that she had to make a decision. If she stayed with Mr. Kong, would he continue to want her hair, or would he use her magic for his own gain? Could she trust him? Lila thought about her family. Her parents had always told her that beauty is what comes from the heart, not just the outside. But her magical hair was something else entirely. It wasn't just about beauty, it was about power. She realized she could use it to protect herself and her family. The next morning, Lila woke up with a clear mind. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't stay with Mr. Kong. He had only wanted her for her hair, and now he knew it was more than that. It was something precious, something she had to protect. As she packed her things, Lila felt a sense of calm. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she had to leave. She had to find out what her hair truly meant, and how to control its power. With a deep breath, Lila walked out of the door, ready to start a new chapter in her life. Lila traveled for days, moving through forests, across rivers, and over mountains. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she had to keep moving. She needed to find someone who could help her understand the magic in her hair. She had heard stories about wise women and men who lived deep in the forest, people who knew the secrets of the world. Perhaps one of them could tell her what was happening. On the third day of her journey, Lila came across a small cottage hidden between two large trees. The air around the cottage was peaceful, and the flowers seemed to bloom brighter than anywhere else. Lila knocked on the door, and an old woman with silver hair answered. "You seem lost, child," the woman said kindly. "What brings you here?" Lila explained everything, the offer from Mr. Kong, the magic in her hair, and the confusion she felt. The woman listened carefully, nodding as Lila spoke. When Lila finished, the woman smiled gently. "Ah, I see," she said. "Your hair is not just a gift. It is a blessing, but it must be protected. It is a symbol of strength, and only those with pure hearts can unlock its true power." Lila felt a sense of relief. Finally, she was talking to someone who understood. "But how can I control it?" Lila asked eagerly. "How can I use it for good?" The woman looked at her thoughtfully. "You must learn to trust yourself, child. The magic is within you. Your heart will guide you." Lila spent several weeks living with the wise woman, learning how to control her magic. The woman taught her many things: how to connect with nature, how to listen to the whispers of the wind, and how to trust her own heart. Little by little, Lila's connection to her hair grew stronger. She learned to make it move on its own, to shape it into different forms, and even to use it to protect herself. One day, the woman told her that it was time for her to leave. "You are ready now," she said. "You have the strength inside you to protect yourself and others. But remember, your hair is not a toy. It is a gift, and you must use it wisely." Lila nodded. She knew it wasn't just about her hair anymore. It was about using her power to do good, to help those in need. The woman gave her a small pouch filled with herbs and a simple necklace. "This will guide you when you are lost," she explained. "It will remind you that your true strength lies in your heart, not just in your hair." With a final hug, Lila left the cottage, feeling ready to face whatever came next. She knew her journey wasn't over. She had much to learn, but she was no longer afraid. She had her magic, and more importantly, she had herself. Lila had been traveling for many days, and just as she was starting to feel comfortable with her newfound power, danger appeared. One evening, while resting by a campfire, Lila was approached by a group of men on horseback. They were wearing dark cloaks, and their faces were hidden in shadows. "We know what you have," one of them said in a cold voice. "Your hair is not just for you. Hand it over, and no one will be harmed." Lila's heart raced. She had never seen these men before, but they clearly knew about her magic. She stood up, her hair beginning to glow faintly. "I won't let you take it," she said, her voice strong. The men laughed. "You are only a child. You cannot stop us." But Lila knew better now. She had learned to control her magic, and she wasn't afraid anymore. With a quick movement, she sent her hair swirling in the air, wrapping around the men's horses and pulling them to the ground. The men struggled to free themselves, but Lila wasn't finished. "Leave now, or I'll make sure you can't hurt anyone else," she warned. The men stared at her, fear in their eyes. Slowly, they backed away and disappeared into the forest. Lila stood tall, proud of her strength. She had learned to protect herself, and she would protect others too. Lila continued her journey, growing stronger with each day. She knew that her power was meant for something greater, but she wasn't sure what that was yet. However, one evening, as she was resting near a river, she heard a familiar voice. "Lila, wait." It was Mr. Kong. He was riding on horseback, looking tired and worn out. Lila was surprised to see him. After all, she had left him behind, and she never expected him to follow her. "I've been searching for you," Mr. Kong said, his face serious. "I want to make things right." Lila crossed her arms, still unsure of his intentions. "What do you want, Mr. Kong? Why are you here?" He looked at her with regret in his eyes. "I was wrong to try to take your hair. I was selfish. I only wanted your magic because I thought it would make my noodle special, but I see now that I was foolish. You have something more valuable than anything I could have imagined." Lila felt a mix of emotions. Part of her wanted to forgive him, but another part felt betrayed. She had trusted him, and he had tried to take what was hers. "What do you want from me now?" Lila asked, her voice steady but wary. Mr. Kong lowered his head. "I understand if you don't want to forgive me. But I want to help you. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to make it up to you. I will follow you wherever you go, and I will never try to take your hair again." Lila thought for a moment. She could see that he was sincere, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to trust him again. Over the next few days, Lila kept her distance from Mr. Kong. She wasn't sure if she could truly forgive him for trying to take something so important from her. But as she traveled, she realized that holding on to anger would only weigh her down. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but she knew that it would help her grow. One morning, as the sun rose over the hills, Lila stopped and turned to Mr. Kong. "I've been thinking," she said softly. "I can't forget what you did, but I can forgive you. Everyone makes mistakes, and I believe you've learned your lesson." Mr. Kong's face lit up with relief. "Thank you, Lila. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I will do everything I can to make things right." Lila smiled gently. "We all make mistakes, but we can change. I'm not holding on to the past anymore. I've learned that the power inside me is not just about magic, it's about kindness, courage, and the ability to forgive." Mr. Kong nodded, grateful for her understanding. Together, they continued on their journey, knowing that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but it meant moving forward with a lighter heart. They would face whatever came next, together. As Lila and Mr. Kong continued their travels, they came across a village that seemed to be in trouble. People looked worried and afraid. They approached an elderly man sitting by a fire. "What's happening here?" Lila asked. The man sighed deeply. "A terrible beast has been terrorizing our village," he said. "It comes at night, destroying our crops and scaring our children. We don't know how to stop it." Lila felt a sense of responsibility. She had learned to use her hair for protection, and now she wondered if her power could help this village. "What does the beast look like?" she asked. The man shuddered. "It's a giant serpent, as long as the river. Its scales are black as night, and its eyes glow red like fire." Lila looked at Mr. Kong. "We have to help them," she said firmly. Mr. Kong nodded. "We can't just let this happen. Let's find a way to stop this beast together." That night, they set up camp near the village, waiting for the serpents to appear. Lila's hair tingled with magic, ready for whatever challenge lay ahead. She knew that this would be a test, not just of her power, but of her courage. As darkness fell, the village was silent. The air was thick with fear. Lila could feel the tension all around her, her heart beating faster as the night stretched on. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the ground. The earth trembled, and the sound of slithering filled the air. "It's here," someone screamed from the village. Lila stood up, her hair glowing softly in the dark. The serpent appeared from the shadows, its massive body coiling around the village, blocking the moonlight. Its red eyes glowed like fiery embers, and its scales shimmered in the dark. Lila's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't feel afraid. She knew she had to act. With a wave of her hand, Lila sent her hair into the air, twisting it into strong ropes that wrapped around the serpent. The creature hissed in anger and tried to break free, but Lila's magic held it tightly. The serpent thrashed and writhed, but Lila's hair was stronger. She focused all her energy into controlling it, making the ropes tighter. "We need to calm it down," Lila said, turning to Mr. Kong. "It's not just attacking. It's afraid." Mr. Kong nodded. "How do we stop it without hurting it?" Lila closed her eyes and listened to the serpent's cries. She could feel its fear, its loneliness. "I think it just wants to be free," she said softly. "If we help it, it will stop hurting the village." Slowly, Lila used her magic to release the serpent from its fear. The ropes loosened, and the creature slithered away, no longer aggressive. The villagers cheered, and Lila smiled. She had not only used her power to protect them but to bring peace. With the serpent gone, the village was safe once more. The villagers were so grateful that they held a feast in Lila and Mr. Kang's honor. As they sat at the table, enjoying the food and laughter, Lila felt a deep sense of peace. She had learned something important that night: true power wasn't just about strength, it was about understanding, compassion, and using your gifts to help others. Mr. Kong looked at her with admiration. "You saved the village, Lila," he said. "But more than that, you showed me what real power looks like. It's not about controlling others or taking what you want. It's about using your gifts for good." Lila smiled. "I didn't do it alone. We did it together." Mr. Kong nodded, and they both knew that their journey wasn't over. They had learned valuable lessons, and there was still so much to discover about the magic in Lila's hair and about the power of kindness. As they finished the feast, Lila looked up at the stars. She had come a long way from the girl who had once been afraid to lose her hair. Now, she knew that her true strength was within her, and that nothing could take that away. As Lila and Mr. Kong traveled further, they entered a dense forest. The trees were so thick that only a little sunlight could peek through. It was quiet, too quiet. They had been walking for hours when they heard a rustling sound from behind them. Lila stopped and turned. A figure stepped out from the shadows, cloaked in a dark robe. It was a woman, tall and mysterious, with a hood that hid most of her face. "Who are you?" Lila asked, her voice cautious. The woman smiled, her eyes glowing faintly. "I am someone who has been waiting for you," she said in a soft, soothing voice. "I've seen your magic. It is powerful, but it is still growing. You must be careful, for there are others who would want to use it for their own purposes." Lila frowned. "What do you mean?" The woman stepped closer. "There are many people in this world who seek power. They would do anything to control what you have. But if you learn to master your magic, you can protect yourself and those you care about." Lila felt a chill run down her spine. She had already faced danger, but now she understood that the world was full of people who would want to steal her gift. "What should I do?" Lila asked. The woman raised her hand and placed it gently on Lila's shoulder. "You must find the heartstone," she said. "It is the key to unlocking the full power of your magic. It will help you control it and keep it safe." Lila felt a wave of determination. "Where is the heartstone?" The woman smiled faintly. "It lies hidden in the Temple of the Winds, far to the north. But be warned, the journey will not be easy. You will face many challenges along the way." With that, the woman disappeared into the forest, leaving Lila and Mr. Kong to think about what she had said. They didn't know what lay ahead, but Lila felt a sense of purpose. She was ready for whatever challenge came next. The next morning, Lila and Mr. Kong set out toward the north, where the Temple of the Winds was said to be. The path was long and difficult, and the weather grew colder as they traveled. The forest gave way to wide plains, where the wind howled fiercely. Lila's hair seemed to react to the wind, swirling around her in gentle, protective circles. "It's strange," Lila said, glancing at her hair. "It feels like it understands the wind." Mr. Kong smiled. "Maybe it does. Your hair is more powerful than we know. It seems to listen to the world around it." As they walked, they came across many obstacles, fast-flowing rivers, rocky cliffs, and thick snow. But with each challenge, Lila's hair helped them overcome it. She used it to build bridges over rivers, clear snow from their path, and even lift Mr. Kong when he slipped on the ice. "Your hair is amazing," Mr. Kong said one evening, as they sat by the campfire. "It's like it knows what to do. It's like it's alive." Lila nodded. "I think it is alive, in a way. It's part of me, and it reacts to my feelings, my thoughts. Maybe that's why it's so powerful." They both sat in silence, contemplating the journey ahead. Lila knew that the heartstone was her next step, but she also realized that the true magic was in her courage, her kindness, and the way her heart guided her. They continued on their journey, feeling more connected than ever. After many days of traveling, they finally reached the Temple of the Winds. It was hidden deep in a valley, surrounded by tall mountains. The temple itself was ancient, made of stone and covered in vines. As Lila stepped forward, she felt a strange energy in the air, a feeling of both awe and fear. The entrance to the temple was guarded by two giant stone statues of winged lions. Their eyes seemed to follow Lila as she approached. "This is it," Lila whispered. "The heartstone must be inside." Mr. Kong nodded. "But we don't know what dangers lie ahead. Be careful." With a deep breath, Lila stepped into the temple. Inside, the air was cool and filled with the scent of old stone and dust. The walls were covered in ancient carvings, telling stories of past heroes and powerful beings. As they moved deeper into the temple, they noticed that the floor was covered in glowing runes. "This is magic," Lila said, her voice awed. "The temple is alive with it." They walked carefully, aware that every step could be a trap. The deeper they went, the more intense the magic seemed. Finally, they reached a large room in the center of the temple. At the far end, on a pedestal, lay a glowing stone, the heartstone. It shone with an ethereal light, and Lila could feel its power pulling her toward it. She stepped forward, but as soon as she did, the room shook violently. A deep growl echoed through the temple. "It's a trap!" Mr. Kong shouted. "Get the heartstone, now!" Lila reached out for the stone, but before she could touch it, a dark figure emerged from the shadows. The dark figure stepped into the light, revealing itself to be a tall, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. It wore black robes, and its face was hidden beneath a hood. "You dare take the heartstone?" the figure asked in a voice that seemed to echo through the temple. Lila felt a chill run down her spine. "I only seek its power to protect myself and others," she said, standing tall. The figure laughed, a cold, hollow sound. The heartstone belongs to those who have the strength to control it. You are not ready, girl. You do not yet understand its true power. I'm ready, Lila said firmly. I've been on this journey to learn the truth. I will not turn back. The figure's eyes glowed brighter, and it raised its hands. Dark energy surged through the room, and the walls trembled. Then you must prove your worth, it said, as it summoned a powerful whirlwind that whipped around the temple, pulling at Lila's hair. The force was strong, but Lila stood her ground. She reached out with her hair, feeling the energy of the wind mix with her own. Slowly, she began to control the whirlwind, using her hair to bend the wind to her will. The dark figure watched, its eyes narrowing. Lila's hair swirled around her, glowing with a bright, golden light as she battled the wind. With one final push, she sent the whirlwind spiraling away, calming the storm. The figure stood still, its face unreadable. You have proven your worth, it said, lowering its hands. The heartstone is yours. Lila stepped forward and gently placed her hand on the heartstone. As soon as her fingers touched it, a wave of energy surged through her. Her hair glowed brighter than ever before, and she felt a connection to the heartstone like never before. The stone pulsed with life, and she realized that it wasn't just a source of magic, it was a part of her, just like her hair. The power wasn't something that could be controlled by anyone else. It was a part of who she was. The dark figure stepped back, nodding in approval. You have truly earned the heartstone's power, it said. But remember, it is not for selfish gain. It must be used to help others, to bring balance to the world. Lila nodded, understanding the weight of the responsibility. With the heartstone in her possession, she felt stronger, more confident. But she also knew that the journey wasn't over. There was still much to learn about her magic, and she was ready to face whatever came next. As Lila and Mr. Kong left the temple, the dark figure vanished into the shadows. Lila's hair shone brightly in the moonlight, a symbol of her new power and the journey that lay ahead. After leaving the Temple of the Winds, Lila felt a new energy pulsing inside her. The heartstone, now safely tucked in a pouch around her neck, seemed to glow with a soft, warm light. Her hair, once just a beautiful gift, now felt like an extension of her very soul. It was more than just long and shiny, it was powerful. Are you all right? Mr. Kong asked, looking at her with concern. You've been so quiet. Lila smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known before. I feel different. The heartstone, it's inside me now, and I think it's changing everything. They continued their journey, but now Lila felt like she could face anything. The magic in her hair was no longer a mystery. It was part of her destiny. What do you think the heartstone can do now? Mr. Kong asked. Lila thought for a moment, her hand resting on the stone beneath her cloak. I think it's teaching me how to use my power for good. It's showing me how to listen to the world around me, and how to protect it. As they walked through the quiet forest, Lila felt her hair respond to the natural energy around her. It fluttered in the breeze like leaves on a tree. She realized that she wasn't just using magic, she was becoming part of it. The world felt alive, and she could feel its heartbeat in her chest. But there was one thing Lila didn't understand yet: who was the shadowy figure in the temple, and why had it tested her? What did it mean when it said she had proven her worth? And was there still danger ahead? Lila knew that she hadn't reached the end of her journey, but for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever came next. A few days later, as they approached the village at the edge of the forest, Lila noticed something strange. The villagers seemed nervous, and many of them looked over their shoulders as they walked. What's going on? Lila asked, turning to Mr. Kong. He frowned. I don't know, but I've heard rumors of dark magic in these parts. People are scared, and they don't know who to trust. Lila's heart skipped a beat. Could the shadowy figure from the temple be involved? Had it followed them? The air around them grew tense, and Lila instinctively reached for the hearthstone, feeling its warmth against her chest. Maybe we should ask around, she suggested. As they walked through the village, they spoke with several people. An old woman with silver hair leaned forward and whispered, "There's been a strange presence here, dark and powerful. We feel it in the wind, in the trees. Something is coming, something terrible." Lila shivered. She couldn't help but wonder if the shadowy figure had somehow followed them. Could the dark magic be seeking the hearthstone? "We can't stay here," Mr. Kong said, his voice urgent. "If the magic is dark, it will only cause trouble." But Lila shook her head. "We can't leave these people in danger. We have to find out what's going on." Determined, Lila decided to stay and investigate, even if it meant facing the shadows once more. She knew the hearthstone would help her, but she wasn't sure how or when the danger would reveal itself. That night, the village was quiet, too quiet. Lila could feel the air heavy with magic. She stayed awake, listening to every sound, every whisper of the wind. Suddenly, a dark figure appeared in the distance. It was cloaked in black, just like the figure from the temple. The figure moved swiftly, vanishing into the trees. "There," Lila whispered, grabbing Mr. Kang's arm. "It's him, the shadow from the temple." They followed the figure into the forest, their footsteps soft on the forest floor. After what felt like hours, they came to a clearing where a tall, dark tower stood. It seemed to be made of shadows, almost blending into the night sky. Lila felt her heart race. This was where the darkness was coming from. They crept closer, and from behind a tree, they saw the figure once more. He stood in front of the tower, chanting softly in an ancient language. As he spoke, the air around him twisted, and dark energy crackled in the air. Lila could feel her hair begin to react, the strands tingling as if it could sense the danger. "What is he doing?" Mr. Kong asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lila watched closely, her eyes narrowing. "I think he's trying to harness the power of the hearthstone. That's why he's been following us." The dark sorcerer turned, his red eyes glowing, and for the first time, Lila saw his face, pale, twisted, and full of malice. "You can't escape, girl," he sneered. "I will take what's mine, and the hearthstone will be mine." Lila stepped forward, her hair swirling around her like a shield. "I won't let you," she said, her voice steady and firm. The sorcerer laughed. "We'll see about that." The air around them seemed to crackle with tension as Lila and the dark sorcerer faced off. He raised his hands, sending waves of dark magic toward her. Lila instinctively used her hair, pulling it into a barrier that blocked the magic. But the force was strong, and she could feel herself being pushed back. "I won't let you control me," Lila shouted, summoning all her strength. She focused on the hearthstone, feeling its power surge through her. Her hair began to glow with the light of the stone, and the wind around her shifted. The dark sorcerer growled, his magic intensifying. "You are weak, girl. You will never defeat me." But Lila wasn't listening to him anymore. She was listening to the hearthstone, to the magic inside her. With a powerful surge, she sent her hair forward, wrapping it around the sorcerer's hands. The dark magic fizzled as Lila's hair absorbed it, becoming brighter and stronger. "You can't win," Lila said, her voice calm but filled with power. "I am the master of this magic now." The sorcerer screamed as his magic began to unravel. Lila's hair glowed brighter, wrapping around him like a cocoon, until the darkness disappeared entirely. As the last of the dark magic faded, Lila stood victorious. The hearthstone's light shone brighter than ever before, and the sorcerer was no more. The village was safe. The village rejoiced when they heard that the dark sorcerer was gone. Lila had saved them, just as she had promised. But she knew that the journey wasn't over yet. With the heartstone in her possession, and her magic fully awakened, there were still many adventures ahead. "You did it," Mr. Kong said, smiling at her. "You've proven that you have the strength and heart to protect this world." Lila smiled back, feeling a deep sense of peace. "The magic isn't just in the heartstone," she said. "It's in all of us. We just have to learn how to use it." As Lila and Mr. Kong walked away from the village, they looked up at the sky, knowing that no matter what came next, they would face it together. Lila's hair swirled gently in the wind, shining with the power of her magic, a symbol of her journey and the bright future ahead.